Okay, so in this example, like let's see how generic .java file that we wrote can be compiled from a command prompt. Okay, so let me open a command prompt and now go to the specific folder location where your .java file is present. Okay, copy that cd change directory to this current location. So in this location, what I do is like I will try to compile the .java file. So compiling means trying to check for any syntactic mistakes. So for that you use a Java compiler known as Java C. Now the next thing is, to this Java compiler you need to give a .java file as input. So I say test.java as input. So just notice, like in the previous example, like in the previous class when we ran this example, it is trying to generate a .class file on this specific time. Okay. So once I try to run the test.java again, means compile this again, this gets modified to the latest version. Okay. Just notice, like if I hit enter in the command prompt, it checks if there are any syntactic mistakes. If not, like did you see here, it has generated a new .class file and the timestamp has been modified to the current timestamp, which means that a fresh .class file is generated. If not, even if I just go ahead and delete this and try to rerun it once again, the same thing, Java C compiling test.java, it generates a .class file for me. And to run this .class file, okay, so what exactly .class file contains? It contains the bytecode. So if I want to run this bytecode once again, all I use is JVM Java interpreter. So I give here as Java space test. It by default looks for a file with an extension .class. If I say test, it shows test .class and it says it tries to execute it and it tries to run that program. And in that program we wrote like print that welcome to Java some statement. So that is what is being printed. So is it clear, Adi? And for everyone else?
Yeah, but so like, is that the same way of doing it on the Mac too?
Yeah, the same thing. That's correct.
Okay.
Okay. Now the next thing, let's start understanding this class, object, and many more technical terms in Java and start writing some basic programs in today's class. So
Real quick.
go ahead.
So what's the reason for doing that? What we just did?
Okay, which one to be specific?
So the one you just showed us. Why and when do we have to do this?
Okay, so let us assume that there is a program which says like you want to calculate the sum of two numbers, and so you write a basic program like a calculator program. Okay, so the calculator program that you have, you want to go ahead and run that calculator class, so that if someone gives in two numbers as input, 1 and 2, you can add those two numbers and give them output. Which means, what is the basic scenario there? You write a program which can perform some tasks and you want to execute the program. So all the logic that needs to be performed, write it in test.java and compile it and run it so that you can see the output by passing some specific parameters to the program. Is it clear?
Yeah, but can we do this on Eclipse?
Yeah, that's correct. We can do it in Eclipse, but the basic scenario is writing it in a notepad will show you an option like writing it without using an IDE. IDE gives a lot of features for you, which you will understand once we start using an IDE. What are the additional benefits that we get rather than using rather than writing everything in the notepad from scratch? If you notice, the couple of statements that I wrote in test.java, I had to manually write everything. But by using an IDE, we can get all these features like everything can be auto created for you. But for that, you need to understand like the basic scenario first, like how to compile a program and how to run it. If you use Eclipse, you will not see a dot class file ideally. It will be created in the background, but you will never notice that if you start using Eclipse from day one itself. So first understand what is happening, what is the background. So in order to understand what is the bytecode, where is it generated, and how a bytecode is generated, we need to go a step by step from scratch. That is the reason why I'm showing it in command prompt. Then from today's class, we'll be looking everything in Eclipse only. Okay. Does it answer your question? I'm not sure like if you had ever tried to use Eclipse before and tried to run a program or not. But if suppose if you had used only Eclipse, you will never ever try to understand this concept. Like this is a dot class file which will be generated by the compiler, which will contain the bytecode, and this bytecode can be understood by any JVM out there in the world. If suppose if someone comes here and asks you, hey, can you explain like how JVM works or how Java attains platform independence? For that you need to have some understanding, right? So that is the specific reason for explaining this. Okay. Now going back to the concepts of understanding how you can create a class or an object and stuff, how you can do this. Okay, let's try to understand some technical terms here. A class and an object. Okay, so before we understand this class, these are the two most common terms that we use across in Java. So before we try to understand a class and an object, let's try to understand a simple scenario. Okay, the scenario is like, let us assume that you are trying to construct a house in some area. Let us assume that you bought a house, you bought a plot in some area, and you want to build a house. So what is the first thing that you do? The first thing that you do is you go to an engineer or a designer or a planner, where to the designer or the engineer you give a specific layout of the house, saying that okay, these are the dimensions of the plot that I have, and in this plot I need a house. That is what you tell the engineer, right? So what exactly the engineer does? The engineer tries to give you a design. Okay, so he will try to give you a design, or basically an architect also you can call an architecture, or sample diagram, or you can say a blueprint. All these are generic terms for a design which an engineer or an architect gives you, right? So what exactly the design tells? The design tells like, okay, in this area your house will contain so much of square foot. In that, here you will get your hall, and this is the position of your bedroom, this is the position of your kitchen, this is your guest area, which means that the design which the engineer is giving will give you an idea of how exactly your actual house will look like. Now, if you are good with the design, what will you say? You will take the design, give it to a builder or a constructor, and you will tell the builder to build an exact house at that specified location. Now, the builder tries to look at the design, and he can say that, okay, this is how the house needs to look like, exterior part. And internally, these are the number of floors, these are the number of rooms, and this is the area of each and every room. Like that, the builder tries to understand all these things by looking at the design which the architect has given, right? Now there are two things in this context. One, the first one is the design given by the architect, and the actual house constructed by the builder. So now, first question to everyone. What exactly is the one that you will be using in future? Means in future means where exactly will you stay? Will you use the design to stay inside or will you stay in the actual house? We will stay in the actual house. Very good. Next question. How can you build the actual house? Taking what as a reference you build the actual house? Very good. Design. Using the design, you can build the actual house. The second question. Without the design, can the builder build the house that you want? Simple as that. The answer is no, which means
Yes and no.
yeah. So consider that it is a no. Why? Because the question is can the builder build the house that you want without the design? The answer is no. Even if you say yes, like he can build based on specifications. Even then, he needs to have a design in mind, saying that okay, this is what the user is expecting. So this is how I need to build the house, right? So what you can understand from this is the builder is taking the design as the reference to build the house, right? So to build the actual house, the builder is taking the design as the reference. Okay, any doubts? Good. So if you try to correlate the same old concept in Java, the design is considered as a class and the actual house is considered as an object. This is where many people get confused, like when in interviews or somewhere when people ask what is the difference between class and object, hardly many people try to answer this in a right manner. But the actual thing is a class is a design or a class is taken as a reference to build the actual object in Java. Okay, so there was one question which I just asked, like what exactly will you be using to stay in? So everyone told that the actual house is the one where you go ahead and stay, right? Now in Java, what is the actual thing that you use based on your understanding? What is the answer? The answer is object. Object, good. Object is the one that you are going to use in Java. But the next question is, how will you build an object? Taking what as a reference you will build an object? Class. Very good. So class is taken as a reference to build the object. Okay, as simple as that. Now we will see how to write a class, what is an object, how to create it and all later. But just understand the high level concept, then we will go into the coding part. Okay. Now if you see here, if you notice here, it shows that a class and an object in Java means the same old explanation whatever we understood is shown here in a simple diagrammatic manner, where it shows like a house design and an actual house, which is nothing but a class and an object. So class is something which we will take as a reference to build this actual object. Okay, now the next question, and again the next thing which you can understand at a high level is when I say an actual house is being built, okay, you can say that let us assume that you bought a plot in some area like a Dallas. In Dallas, you have a specific address where you bought a land, and that is where you are trying to build a house, right? So now you can say that hey, where exactly the actual house is present? Then you can say that hey, it is present at some location in Dallas, you can give the specific address. Now, the next question, when I say the object exists in the real world, okay, or in Java, object is the one which will exist, then many people might ask like, where exactly the object will exist? Any question? Sorry, any answer? Very good. Objects exist in memory. Okay. So that memory, technically we call it as heap. Okay. We'll see about heap and stack later. But an understanding here is heap is where we store all the objects. Now the next question. Where exactly that heap is present? The heap is a technical term to store all the objects in Java. Heap is nothing but your system RAM, random access memory on your machine. RAM is the one where the heap where your objects are created in the memory. Okay, so if you go deep into that, RAM is if you have a 4 GB RAM, in that you give 1 GB for Java. In that 1 GB, again, let us assume that Java will split different memory locations, like a heap will contain like 512 MB. In that 512 MB, again, if there are certain internal sections, so all the sections will contain specific type of data like that. There is some location on the RAM called as heap where all your objects that are being built by Java will be stored or will be present. Okay, next question. A simple example here. So I say here like this is a car, or else let me do one thing, team. At this point, let me show you how to use Eclipse. Okay, once how to use Eclipse, and then how to create a project and create a simple class in Java. Okay, so I hope most of you might have used, or most of you might have created Eclipse shortcut on desktop, right? The first thing the Eclipse download and installation video shows is like download Eclipse, Java EE version Eclipse, and then unzip that Eclipse to a location, and from there you will be having something called as, maybe if you can see here, you have Java, then see the other thing, you can have n number of Eclipse versions which can be downloaded on your machine, not a problem. So this is the .exe file. So every time you want to open Eclipse, you can come to this folder, double click on this exe file to run it, or you can just say something like right click, send to desktop, so that a shortcut can be created on the desktop, and instead of coming to this location every time, you can use that shortcut. Okay, so this is the excuse me, this is the shortcut that I have created. So if I double click on this shortcut, it tries to open the Eclipse for me. Okay, Eclipse is considered as an IDE, integrated development environment. So this is like a tool where I can use this Eclipse to where I can write all my programs and store it. Okay, so the first thing it asks for is something called as workspace. So the workspace is nothing but a physical location where you want to store all your works. Okay, so I say, so let me show you a specific location. So what I do is, so see workspace. So in this folder, I will create our workspace or physical location space. Okay. So here what I said is a physical location I am giving. So I say OK. Once I say OK, there will be a folder which will be created. See, there is a folder which is created just now, 831. So in this, it has created a metadata folder for the Eclipse reference. Okay, this is a folder, or this is the physical location where all your programs that you're writing in Eclipse will come and will be stored here. Okay. So the IDE is coming up. So for the first time, if you are loading this IDE, okay, to a specific folder location, the way or how it looks like is it tries to show you this welcome page. Okay, so nothing much you can do with this. You can just close this welcome page. Okay, click on this close symbol. So once you click on this close symbol, you can click on this close symbol. Now you can see a prompt called Project Explorer on the left hand side. So first let me start using this Eclipse and let me explain each and everything in detail. Okay. The first thing is the Project Explorer on the left hand side, which is considered as the index of a textbook. Like if you open an index, what exactly index of a textbook will show? It shows all the chapters which are present in the textbook, right? So the same way, if you create multiple projects in your Eclipse, all those projects will be displayed under this Project Explorer. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to do is create a simple Java project where I can create a class and I can write all the features, then create objects and all those things. Okay, first let's see how to create a project. So file, new, okay, and under after file new, go to other. Okay, so say select other. So once you select other, all you need to do is like you need to select a Java project. So Java project is present here, or if not, it is also one thing. If suppose if you are not sure or the location of the Java project, you can just start typing in Java. It will give you the prompts. So either Java project here or Java project is also present under the folder called Java. Since we might be frequently using this class interface Java project and all, it is given here for wizard. So select this or this, both are same thing. Okay, either double click on this or select that and say next and give a simple name there. Okay, I just gave a name as first Java project. Once you give a name, leave everything as is as default. Okay, don't change any of these things. You will understand slowly and say finish. Okay, remember my decision. It asks like whether do you want to open this process or not. Say yes. Okay, so it has created a simple project for you. Now if you remember, I just told that all the projects that you create will be stored in a physical location at some place like workspace or workspace others, right? So if you see here, it shows first Java project, which means this is the project that I have just created. Okay, so the physical location will be this, and under this if you expand and see, it contains GRE system library and then the SRC folder. The SRC folder is the one which contains all your source code. Okay, the SRC folder. Now the next thing, the SRC folder, what I will do is whatever code that I am going to write in future will be written under this SRC folder. Okay, now the next thing is the most important thing, like creating packages in Java. Okay, so packages are used for grouping similar kind of things. Okay, so what I will do is before I explain this, let's go to this package and just understand that packaging helps us to group related types, and it will help us in resolving some naming conflicts and control access and all that other stuff. Let's try to see it with an example, like what exactly is meant by a package. Okay, so under SRC folder, there are two things that we are trying to understand here. One is a class, the other one is an object. Now let's add one more thing called package. Okay, so let me create a package. Inside that package, let me create a class. Okay, for creating a package, all I do is right click on SRC folder. Okay, right click on SRC folder, then say new and call it as package. Okay, I'm creating a package. Now this package I will give a specific name. So in general, the naming convention that that is followed for creating packages is the exact reverse direction of the URL. If it is like a Google, Google will maintain its code base in this package format. The URL is www.google.com. So the package structure will be com.google. Followed by whatever naming convention that you want to give. Okay, it's in the reverse order. So here I say com dot, and the naming convention can be anything. It can be a dot b dot c or a dot b or just a. It can be anything, the package naming convention, but I'm just explaining the standard convention, how companies or how industry follows. Okay, java dot first program. Okay, I told com dot easylearn java dot first program. So now I say finish. So there is a package which is created here. Now you might think, what exactly is a package? You might see this com.easylearn-java.first program inside Eclipse, but if you go ahead and see the physical location of this project, it's nothing but under SRC there is something called as a com, which is a folder, and inside this EasyLearn Java is a folder, and inside that first program is again a folder. So it is nothing but a specific folder structure that we are creating and telling it as a package in Java. Now under this package I will create a program. Sorry, under that I will create a class. So when I say class, the first thing that I give is like a name for the class. And the next thing that I want every one of you to understand here is whatever class that I am trying to create is this test.java, something like this. Don't confuse with the class that I'm creating with the dot class file. Okay, don't confuse between both of these. Okay, I'm creating this Java file. So for that, what I do is I write a standard program name like test. Excuse me. So I created a class name called test, and if you see the standard convention that I'm following, the first character in the class name is capital. Okay, these are certain standard rules that are defined to be followed. So the first character should be caps. So test, so T caps, and I gave the class name as test. You can give any name. Okay, and say finish. Just write the class name. And if you observe here, the source folder is actual project name /src, and the package that you're writing inside is com.easylearn-java.first program, and the name is test. So say finish. So public class test. Okay, and these things are nothing but open bracket and close bracket, where in between these two brackets we write the entire code. Whatever we want to write inside a class is written in between these two brackets. Now say anytime you see a star symbol, it means that you need to save your changes. Do a control S, or you can select this save option here. Okay, so the first thing, I have created a simple class with a name called test, and it is present under the package com.easylearn-java.first program. Okay, so created a simple class, and let me do the same old stuff whatever I did here. Okay, whatever I did here, let me do the same old stuff. Welcome to Java. Okay, I say this is out. One second. So the next thing that I do is, once the class is created, the next thing that I will do is I need to write a main method to run a Java program. Okay. So in our previous example, what I did, I had to explicitly go ahead and write public class test. This syntax I need to write, but here Eclipse has created for us. The next thing is I wrote explicitly public static void main string args, like that I created a method, but here I'm using a shortcut main and do a control space. and it shows, do you mean a main method which is in this syntax? Yes, I mean that. So I click on that. So a main method is written for me by the Eclipse. And the next thing that I did is I wrote a print statement to print welcome to Java. Okay. So now what I do is SYSOUT, South. Again a shortcut, and I do control space. So it wrote system.out.println, which is used for printing anything onto a standard output called console in Eclipse. So here I write welcome to Java. Okay. Now the next thing here is Eclipse has a feature of auto compiling. So we need not compile the program here. In the previous scenario, you had to explicitly compile it and then you had to run it to see the output. But in Eclipse, it is auto compiling stuff for you. The next thing that I do is I simply go ahead and run the program. To run it, there are many ways. So inside this test.java, anywhere I can right click and say run as, not on server, run as Java application. I can say, I can select this option, run as Java application, alt shift, or I can use this shortcut alt plus shift plus X and press J. Either I can do that, or I can right click on test.java and I can say run as Java application. Either I can do this, or I can use a symbol here which says run, with which it can run my current test.java file. Okay, so I will use this option like run here. Click on this. Did you notice here there is something called as a console which is being shown here, which contains the actual output that I wrote in the class, in this class. So let me just modify this. Welcome to Java world. Okay, I save it and then try to run it again. You see welcome to Java world. This is the output that is being shown. Okay, so before means let's not worry about what is this specific syntax and all and how to write this specific syntax, but just let me know, is it clear for everyone like how you can create a project, then a package and a class, and how you can run this? Is it clear? Okay, that's good thing. So if it is clear, then we will go ahead to the next step. Okay. So this is the basic understanding of how to create a simple project, package, and a class. Now, when I say like packages group similar group things, similar things, then what you can understand here is, let us assume that you want to create a different package. Okay, so you want to write a program which can calculate or which can do addition, subtraction, multiplication, like a calculator program. So instead of writing it in first project, so what I do is I will create a more meaningful package name, saying that form dot easylearn java dot calculator project. Finish. And I will write my class like, okay, what is the class that I will say? Calculator. Okay, and I say finish. So what I do here is the calculator.java is being stored under this calculator project. So tomorrow when someone asks me saying that, first of all, is this clear, like what exactly this package is doing? Yeah, okay. So if if it is clear, then it basically shows like if someone asks that, hey, where is your code related to your calculator project present? Then you can say that all my code related to calculator project is present under this package, and the rest of all the code is present under this package. Like that, you can group similar classes into a package and you can store them. That's the only thing. Clear with this? Okay, yeah. So going ahead, the next thing, any class that you create, like a car class or anything, it has certain features, or I can say like it has some attributes and methods. When I say attributes, the first thing that you can understand here is the attributes basically tell what exactly are the features or what exactly are the values that a class can hold. So let us assume that I'm creating a car class, and the car class can have some attributes like who is the manufacturer. So Ford is the manufacturer. What is the color? The color is black. What is the odometer reading? Initially, it has 10 miles on it. Like that, which means these are all the attributes which an object can contain at a specific given instance of time. Okay, so now after I drive the car like some 1,000 miles, what will be the manufacturer? It can still be Ford, the color can still be black, but the odometer reading is 1,000, which means all these attributes will contain the values or the data at a specific instance of time. Okay, and maybe if you want to understand in the simplest way, attributes are nothing but the values given for a class, and the methods are nothing but the features that it can exhibit. So you can drive, you can paint, you can fill gas, you can apply brake, you can change gear. All these things are the methods. So whenever you say a method called drive, you will write internally some functionality. The same way, let us take a simplest example of a calculator class. In a calculator, the methods can be add, subtract, divide, multiply. So under add, you will write some logic where it can take in some input parameters, it can add those numbers, and it can give it back to you, right? So they are the methods present in that class. So each class has certain attributes and methods. It's not always mandatory that you need to have these things, attributes and methods. See an example that I'm trying to create here. So I create a class dummy. See, this is again a class, a well-defined class where you don't have anything inside it. It doesn't have any attributes, it doesn't have any methods. But all I want to say is you can have a class with nothing in it, but ideally we don't prefer to do this way. Why? Because when you are creating a class like a car, you want to define certain attributes and methods in it. So in general, we write at least some attributes and methods in it. Okay. So this is whatever I write here, test.java or dummy.java. These are all considered as classes in Java. Okay, this is a class in Java. Now, the next thing we have all these things. Yeah, the next thing is something like Java keywords. So what exactly is a keyword in Java? So if you see a program and if you clearly notice the way the program looks like, package or public or class or public, static, void, all these words that I have highlighted are in a specific color in Eclipse. Okay, Eclipse gives that feature. Means what are these words? They are nothing but they are considered as keywords in Java. Okay, keywords in Java. The keywords are some reserved words in Java with a predefined meaning. So when I say public, it has a predefined meaning in Java. So you cannot use these keywords wherever you want. Okay, so why? Because in general, let us assume that you have a keyword called class. It means that whatever you have written as a test is considered as a class in Java. So because of this keyword, you are giving a specific meaning to this test. Okay, so test is considered as a class because of this keyword called class, and public is a keyword, package is a keyword, all these. So keywords are some reserved words with some predefined meaning in Java. Okay, need not remember all these keywords. As and when we start programming, we'll see all these set of keywords. using. Okay, which we'll be using. And the next thing that I would like to tell everyone is like, in general, whenever you write a program or a Java file or a class in Java, always make sure that you create a package and write a class inside that. That is considered as a standard way of creating a class or an appropriate way of doing that. Okay, why? Because that is how it is being there are certain guidelines or rules which Java define, like coding standards. If you follow the coding standards, that will be very easy for you and for anyone else who is trying to maintain your code. Okay, it's for easy maintainability. The same way as I told, the class name must start with a capital letter. That is again a standard defined by Java, right? Nothing wrong if I write with a small letter. See, I say new and I say class and I define it as ABC. There is nothing wrong when I do it ABC, but it is shown as a warning. Type name is discouraged. By convention, Java type name usually starts with an uppercase letter. Okay, that's just a warning. Even if you create, there is nothing wrong. See here, I created a class with a small letter ABC itself. Okay, so only thing that you need to understand is like to follow certain standard guidelines. Okay. So let me delete this abc.java. That's the first one. And the next thing is, if you understand this class declaration, the first line that we saw in the class declaration is the package name. Okay. So by default in Java, the first statement in every class will be a package statement only. You cannot declare this package statement at the end. You cannot say that, hey, I'm going to write this package statement here. That is syntactically wrong completely. The standard rule is the first statement must always be a package statement. Okay. Then you might ask a quick question to me. Hey, if we go back to the test.java program that we wrote, we never had a package statement inside it, right? I just started with public class test. I did not write a package statement. So the understanding here is, if suppose if you have a class inside a package, then the first statement must be a package statement, then followed by the class name. And there is one more thing that is called as import statements. It looks like import and followed by some class declaration we will write. But in the current scenario, we don't have any import statements. So consider this way. If you have a package statement, that must be the first sentence. If you have import statements, they must be the second statements and then followed by the class. So this is the way the class needs to be declared. Package statements first, import statements next, then the actual class declaration. This we will see going ahead when we add external classes or different other classes. Okay. Now this is the way the hierarchy should look like. Now going back to this keyword, so I hope keywords are good. The next thing that we see here is comments. How do you write comments in Java? So when I say comments, let us assume that you are writing some sample code. Okay, let's go back to this example. And in this example, comments, if you want to write a comment, in general, comments are used or written for a more understandable purpose. Like let us assume that you are writing or you are implementing a logic which has a lot of if else conditions or some understanding that needs to be that you need to put there. So you can write a comment saying that the below logic is written to implement or to fix a bug, or below logic is used for calculating the percentage interest for a bank in a special condition. Like that, you can write some comments so that the comments can help people for understanding your code and for easy maintainability and all those things. So how do you write a comment? You can write comments using // two forward slashes. Then you can say this is a single line comment. Okay, you can write comments like that. And then if you want to write multi-line comments, which means comments in multiple lines, then you can say /*, hit enter, and it shows this is a multi-line comment. Okay, if you want to write a comment in multiple lines, if suppose if you have a big comment, very big comment that you want to write, so you instead of writing everything in one line, you can use this multi-line comment for writing the comments. Okay, so there is nothing specific which happens because of these comments. The runtime environment totally ignores these things. Okay, so all it happens is like it only executes this set of code, but these are used for, these comments are used for maintaining your code or for code maintainability basically. Okay, someone else who comes there to understand your logic and all. So welcome to Java world. Nothing specific. Line number 17 has been executed, okay, by the runtime environment now. So you understood how to write a single line comment and how to write multi-line comments. The next thing and the most important thing is like data types and variables in Java. So when I say data types and variables in Java, most of you might be aware of these data types and variables. So let's start understanding one by one. So let's start with the data types. The data types in Java are broadly classified into two types. One is primitive data types, and then the second one is reference data types. And in today's class, we'll be only looking into primitive data types, where the primitive data types are considered as the basic building blocks in Java. Okay, primitive data types are basic building blocks. Like if you want to store a number, you use a primitive data type. If you want to store a character, you use a primitive data type. Like that, there are 8 different data types in Java which are considered as primitive data types. So now, if you understand these primitive data types and if you try to broadly classify them, primitive data types are considered as either numeric types. Under numeric, is it a floating point like a float and a double, or some integral types like byte, short, int and long, or boolean and character? So the 8 data types in Java are float, double, byte, short, int, long, boolean and character. These are the 8 primitive data types defined in Java. Okay, we'll see with an example. And before that, the next thing that you need to understand here is every data type has or occupies certain amount of space, and the lowest or the least one occupies 1 byte of memory, that is nothing but a byte. Byte is also a data type in Java. Then short occupies 2 bytes of data. Then int occupies 4 bytes of data. Long occupies 8 bytes of data. And float like this. Every data type out there in Java occupies certain amount of space to store the values. Now, the next thing that we see here is variables. Variables is where you try to actually store the data. So let's try to combine the variables and the data types, and let's see an example. Okay. So now I will be explaining variables and data types, right? So let me create a different package and store the examples for these scenarios under that package. So that in future, if you want to refer them, you will go to that package. Okay. By that, you might, by this time, you might have, and you might have got some idea of what exactly a package is used for, right? So now I say a package and say com dot easylearnjava dot data types and variables. Okay, let me close this thing. So in this package, let me create again a class called some test class. So for time being, just understand that means we will look into this main method later, why it is in this specific format, public static void main and all. But for time being, understand that if you want to run a program, you must have a main method in that program. Okay, public static void main string args. So now let us try to understand a primitive data types with variables. So one of the primitive data types, the example is int, and I say x, some variable name, and equal to 5. Okay, so to understand this in a much better way, x is a variable of type int which can store the value 5. Okay, what is x? X is a variable. What is x of type? It is of type int. And what it can store? It can store number 5 in it. It means a variable can be used to hold data, and the data type tells what exactly is the type of data that x can hold. Okay, so now if I want to store x equal to 5.4, I cannot do that. Why? Because 5.4 is considered as a non-int data type. This is not an int data type. This is considered as something else. This is an for now just consider it as a double, since it is a double. So int cannot store a double value, so it is being shown as an error. Now if you want to store something else, or if you want to reassign the value of x, you can say x equal to 7, or I can say x equal to 9. You can say whatever you want. Then if you want to re-declare x, so x is declared at line number 8 and it is re-initialized at line number 10 and 11. This is good. But if you say like, hey, I want to re-declare x again, if you say int x equal to 55 or anything, it is being shown as an error. Why? Because it is considered as a duplicate local variable. It says, hey, x is already declared at line number 8, so don't declare x again. Okay, that's what it shows. Duplicate local variable x. So you can say like x or y or whatever to store it. Okay. Now the next thing is, like, if you want to store a character, you say char c equal to a. So I can store a character using a single quotes and into char, okay, data type. And the next thing that you need to understand here is what is, okay, let's understand a float and a double in Java. One of the most important things, like any decimal value that you want to store can be stored either in float or double. So I can say float z equal to 5.6. I can store a float value, and I can say double d equal to 3.2. Okay, now see here in Java, as I said, like in Eclipse, if you write some mistake or if you do some mistake, the Eclipse is doing an auto compilation for you, means it is running Java C command every time. So the 5.6, there is some mistake at line number 17. That is the reason why it shows a red symbol there, and also you can see a red mark here. Okay, so the red mark shows that cannot convert from double to float. If you read that error message, it shows cannot convert from double to float. We will understand this error. But the first thing, 5.6 and 3.2, they are all, both are considered as decimal values. So now the next thing, when I say both are decimal values, and the float can also store decimal, double can also store decimal. But why line number 17 is throwing an error? Why? Because by default in Java, any decimal value that you declare is considered as a floating value. Sorry. It's considered as a double value. So even if you say 3.2 or 5.6 or anything you say, it is considered as a double value. So in order to explicitly tell Java that, hey, 5.6 is not a double in this scenario, 5.6 I want to store it as a float value, the Java compiler explicitly expects a symbol f for a float at the end of the decimal symbol, saying that 5.6 is considered as a floating value which I want to store it in z. So even the 5.6 and 3.2 both are decimals, 5.6f makes this as a float value, 3.2 makes it as a double value. Okay, so by default any decimal value in Java is considered as double. Okay, clear till this point? Is it clear, team? What happened? No response from anyone. Okay. So the next thing that I will show here is what is or what are the valid ways in which you can create a variable naming convention. Okay. Let me write a main method again. So once I write a main method, the next thing that I will do here is the basic scenario. I will again use int value, so int x equal to 5. Well and good. That is how you can declare a variable. Good. Now I say int underscore y equal to 23. Well and good. I can start a variable name with underscore. Good. Now I say int dollar z equal to 1. Okay. So now I started the character with the variable name with dollar symbol. Well and good. So there are three scenarios here for declaring the variable standard naming conventions. The first thing is I'm using a character. Okay, I can say xx x y y z z means I can say a a b b. So I can use anything, but the first character is a character. In this scenario, the first one is an underscore, 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 and followed by a lot of variables. And the next, in the third scenario, it is a dollar symbol, which means either it can start with the character, either it can start with an underscore, or either it can start with a dollar symbol. And see here, don't assume that it can just start with a dollar symbol and then followed by character only. It can contain multiple dollar symbols like this also. Okay, I'm only considering the first character. These are the three valid scenarios for creating variables in Java. Anything apart from this is considered as illegal declaration. So let us assume that someone says that, hey, let me declare or let me create a variable with a number. So I say 3a equal to 15. So here Java starts complaining that, hey, you cannot start a variable name with a number, that is illegal. Okay, so I started that with a character. Now it is legal. So like that, there are some legal ways of writing. So either you can have an underscore or a dollar symbol or multiple underscores or underscore dollar symbol or a big name separated by underscores. These are all valid ways. But if you start with anything apart from that, like a colon, minus symbol, e or dot, so e is hash or a dot symbol or a number, all these are considered as illegal identifiers for a naming convention. Okay, so those things cannot be followed for variable naming conventions. Okay, I hope that is clear to everyone. Okay. Now, the next thing. The next thing that we will see here is like type conversions. Okay. So let me create a package. So let us try to understand some type conversions here. So when I say type conversions, the first thing that I do here is like, let me create same old simple int x equal to 5. Okay. The next thing that I do is I will try to print the value of x using a print statement. Okay. Sys out x. Okay. System.out.println, which means it is a standard way of printing the output to the console. Print x, I told. Then I run it. It prints 5. Now, if I want to make it more informative, sysalt generally basically prints empty line here in sysalt. So if I want to make line number 9 more informative, instead of just printing x, I want to add some message. So I say the value of x is. So whatever I have written till now, so the value of x is, everything is written in double quotes, right? Since everything is written in double quotes, what exactly the Java will do is, the Java compiler will do is, it will just say that this is syntactically correct, and at the runtime, since all this is present inside double quotes, the exact value will be present or will be printed in the output. Don't assume that this x will be dynamically replaced with 5. Don't assume. So it will not happen. Why? Because everything is inside double quotes. The value which is present inside the double quotes will not be evaluated in a sysout. So if I print it, the value of x is being printed. Now if I want to print 5 at this statement, all I do is I need to say x. Okay, so I need to type use this x here. But now since I'm using two different types here, one is a string and one is an int here, I need to concatenate both different types using a symbol called plus. So what plus does is, it tries to print this value, and to this value it will append the value of x. What is the value of x? The value of x will be 5. So 5 will be appended to this statement. So before I execute this program, see the old output. The previous output is the value of x is. It doesn't show anything. Now if I try to run this same class, it shows the value of x is 5. Means it basically tries to print the value of x. So line number 11 is more informative than line number 9. Okay, is it clear? Line number 11, like the print statement. Okay, good, that's good. Now the next thing that we will do here is, means this class or this example is basically to explain type conversions. Okay, explicit casting and implicit casting and all those things. Now here I say I create one more variable called double d equal to 4.3. That is what I say, and I want to print the value of d. Without the value of d is, let me print it, save it, Control S, and then run it. Okay, it shows 4.3 as the output. Now the next thing, let us assume that I want to assign the value of d to x. Okay, so here at line number 14 I say x equal to, or let me do this, d equal to x is what I did, which means I'm assigning the value of x to d at line number 14. So what will be the output for line number 16 and 17 team? For only 16 and 17, what is the output? 5 and 5. Very good. So if I try to run this, it shows 5. Yeah, 5 and 5.4. Why? Because like 5.0 is considered as a double representation. Since it is a double, it shows as 5.0. Okay. Yeah. Now the next thing I say is x equal to, let me do one thing. Double dd equal to 5.8. Now here I say x equal to dd. That is what I say. Now it shows an error at line number 20. Any guess why it shows an error? The reason for this is, yes, mismatch of double. Very good. So the first thing that you need to understand here is dd. Okay, Adit, one quick thing, like integer in Java is different from int in Java. Okay, so I understood like what you are trying to say, but just trying to yeah, that's what I mean to say. Like it's an int. Okay, we will see what is integer and the differences in later classes. Now when I say dd as 5.8, it is of type double and x is of type int. Now the Java compiler starts complaining saying that hey, x can only store whole numbers. It cannot store the decimal numbers. But if you are trying to store a decimal value into an int, there will be definitely some loss of data. So since there will be a loss of data, I cannot store the value of double into x. That is what line number 20 is complaining. So now, even if you go back and see the variable declarations, for storing double, it has 8 bytes. And but for storing int, it only takes 4 bytes. So it cannot store 8 bytes of data into 4 bytes. So that is also one reason where the compiler starts complaining. So now these things the compiler will not allow. But at line number 15, what is happening? At line number 15, the compiler does a conversion from int to double. Okay, this is called as implicit conversion done by the compiler automatically. But this, the implicit conversion does not hold good because this scenario will cause in loss of data. So compiler will not allow this. Compiler will throw an error. Now, is there a way that you can still do it? Yes, you can still do it by doing an explicit conversion. You are telling the compiler, hey compiler, even if there is a loss of data, that's okay with me. Just convert this. How do you tell that? You say that dd is of type double, that you want to convert it into an int. So I say int and say int dd. So the dd is stored or is converted into this type int and will be stored in x. Okay. So this is an explicit conversion done by us. Okay. So now what is the output for line number 22 only? Any guess? 5 and 5.8. Yeah, that's good. So for line number 22, the output is 5 and dd it always remains the same like 5.8. So it is 5.8. Okay. That's like more into conversions, implicit and explicit conversions in Java. So we understood, like we'll see the reference data types. Okay, maybe we'll start with this reference data types arrays. Okay, now any doubts till this concept? Okay, that's good. Now let's take one step ahead and try to go into the concept of arrays in Java. Okay, so when I say arrays, let me say create a package. Java dot arrays demo. Some package name I created, and in this I'll create a package called test, a class called test. Sorry. I create something called test.java. So under this test, let me write a main method. So let us understand a simple example. Okay. Let us assume that I want to store a value 5. Okay. What I can do, if it's of type int, I can say int x equal to 5. I can say. So let us assume that I want to store some student marks of one subject. So, or I want to store some attendance came or not, or some height or whatever. So I want to store marks. So I say int m1 equal to, so out of 100 they got 50, 55. Okay. Then the second subject marks. If I want to store int m2 equal to 76. Then again one more subject. I say int m3 equal to 88. Then one more subject mark. Int m4 means M1, M2, M3, M4 are not the standard naming conventions. You can say like M1, M2, M3 or int A equal to 77 like this. Which means what are you trying to do here? We are trying to maintain each and every primitive data type into a variable and trying to store it. So let us assume that tomorrow you want to store some 50 values, okay? Some random 50 values. So will you keep on creating 50 variables like M1, M2, A, B, C, C1, C2, X, Y, Z, X1, X2 like that? Will you keep on creating 50 variables? No, that is not the solution for this problem. So what is the problem? You want to store 50 variables like some marks of type int. So creating 50 variables and storing all the 50 values into those variables is not a solution for this problem. So what is the next solution? The solution is something called as arrays in Java. Okay, so I create a class under that package. So I say array example. So in this array example, what I do is the first thing, let me make a main method. So before I show a syntax of how an array looks like and all, let me explain you what is an array. An array is considered as sequential storage of similar kind of data. So on, okay, the most important thing, sequential storage of similar kind of data. So see here, sequential storage, which means if you have 50 numbers that you want to store, you can allocate or you can create an array which can store 50 numbers, and in that 50 slots you can store whatever values you want. Okay, and how exactly all these 50 values are created? 50 values are created side by side, when I say side by side. So let us assume that I want to store 50 int values. When I say 50 int values, the first thing that comes to my mind is like I want to create a location. So a sample example that I am going to give here is, let us assume that an array which you have created at memory location 2000. When the first location is 2000, what will be the second location? The second location will be starting with 2004. Why? Because since this is an int array and each int value will be storing 4 bytes of memory, or it needs 4 bytes of memory to store a value. So this at 2000, this starts at 2004, and the next one starts at 2008, and so on. Which means, what is this 2000 that I'm saying? This is a reference and value, or sorry, this is an address for your understanding purpose. Okay, on the memory at the location 2000, if the array starts and if it can hold a value, like if I want to store a value like 55 here, so it stores 55, and here it can store a value like 98, and it can store a value like 33, something like that. So I want to store random values in this int array. So I use a sequential storage of similar kind of data. This is nothing but an array which I am trying to declare in the memory. So let's see how I can store that data. So for that, all I need to do is, see, before I redeclare again, the problem is if I have 50 values that I want to store, in this current example like test.java, I need to create 50 variables, m1, m2, m3, a, b, c, a1, a2, a3, like that. I need to have 50 variables for storing 50 values, but that is not the right solution. In this example, what I declare is, I will just declare one array, and what is the type of data that I want to store? I want to store int type of data. So int, an array, an open bracket and close bracket, square brackets, and let me name it as ARR equal to new. Every time I say new in Java, it means that give me some memory location. Okay, new int of, this is a standard naming convention or a standard declaration that I do, and say 50. It means, maybe for timing, let me make it a simple and let me make it 10. Okay, so what happens in this scenario is, during runtime, whenever line number 7 is executed, 10 memory locations will be created for me side by side, which means sequentially, one after the other. 10 memory locations will be created, and only I can store int values into it. I cannot store a different data type into this int values. Okay, so what I say here is, I hope everyone can see this example. Like an array like this will be created, and if you want to access each and every location, you can access this by using the index. And if I say I need 10 locations, the index starts from, always the index starts from 0th location, 0th index, and the size goes till size minus 1, which, sorry, the index goes till size minus 1. So if I have 10 elements, it means the last index will be size minus 1, 10 minus 1, 9, and the first index will be always be 0. So to access the first element in an array, it should be the 0th index, and to access the last element in the array, it should be the size minus 1 index. Okay, so the next thing that I do here is, so what did I do here? Created an array. Okay, the next thing that I do here is initialize an array. So when I say initialize an array or assign some values, initialize an array. some values. Okay, so how to initialize? If I want to initialize, so how many locations I have? 10 locations. Out of those 10 locations, if I want to start assigning some values, if I want to store some values, I need to store the values in some index locations. So ARR is nothing but the name that you are giving to this array. So see, you have created an array like this, right, in the memory, like for 10 locations. So what is the name of this array that you have created? The name of the array is ARR. So at any point of time, if you say ARR, it means that you are referring to this array. Okay. So ARR of 0, the 0th index. What do you want to store? You want to store 55. And the next index ARR of 1 equal to 98. Like this, which means out of the 10 indexes or 10 locations that you have, in the first location or in the first index, okay, you are storing 55, and in the next one you are storing 98. So you are trying to initialize some values here. How to retrieve the values? I say this out. The value at 0th index position is the simplest thing. ARR of 0 again. Okay, so value at 0th index, if I want to get, ARR stands for the array name. What is the index value at which I want, what is the index location at which I want the value? Let me retrieve the index, 0th index in this array. So ARR of 0. So if I print it, it prints 55 for me. If I say I want to retrieve at the index location 1, it is 98. Okay, so 0th index is 55, first index is 98. Then if I try to print the second index ARR of 2, the output will be 0. If you observe here, the output will be 0. And the next thing that you need to understand here is ARR of 2, we never initialized it with any value, right? I did not write here that ARR of 2 equal to 0, like that I did not write, but still, okay, let me make it as a more meaningful, nothing specific, just a out statement I want to change. The value at second index position is ARR of 2, which is nothing but 0. How is it happening? This is nothing but ARR of 2 is a value for which a default value will be assigned. Okay, at line number 8, whenever I say give me 10 memory locations, what Java will do is Java will give you 10 memory locations and it will see, hey, what is the array type? The array is of type int. Okay, for int values, the default value is 0. So at this point, Java will create 10 memory locations and all the 10 memory locations will be filled with zeros. And if you try to change that value to 55 or 98, it will be these new values will be allocated in those indexes. If you don't change them, by default the values in those indexes will be zeros. Now tell me what will be the output for this sentence that I'm going to write at line number 17, where I want to print the 7th index value. What is the output for line number 17? Very good. The output would be 0. Why? Because still the 7th index I never assigned any value, right? So the 7th index will be still be 0. So if I try to print it, 7th index is 0. Now tell me what will be the output for line number 17 again. 65. Very good. If I run it, it shows 65. Okay. Now you might get the next question like, hey, what is the maximum index that I can access? The maximum index is size minus 1, 10 minus 1. It is the ninth index position that you can access. Well and good. I try to print it. It shows 0. Okay, as expected. Now, you might say that let me access anything greater than the index. Yeah, I guess the audio connection got lost. So I'm just reiterating the statement again. So let us assume that you want to access the value which is greater than the index where you are allowed to access. So you are allowed to access till ninth index. So let us assume that you want to access 10th index or 11th index or 12th index or whatever. Like for now, let's assume that I want to access the 10th index. So if I try to access the 10th index, it shows some exception. So it shows something in red. So let's not worry about this one for now, but just understand that accessing anything greater than the specified index is always an error scenario. So don't ever try to do that. Okay. So let me just comment it out and run it. So 0 and 65. So the first thing that you understood here is how to create an array and what is an array. So array is nothing but sequential storage of similar kind of data. When I say similar kind of data, let me store a float value into this 65.2 f for float. So if I try to do this, it again starts complaining. Cannot convert from float to int. Why? Because it can only store int type values. Okay, sequential storage of similar kind of data. So it only stores values in sequential order and only of type int it can do. So whenever you initialize an array or create an array and say give me 10 elements, then it means the Java based on this new parameter it checks and thinks that okay, they need some int values of 10 locations. So create 10 locations and assign everything with the default values like 0 0 0 0 and all. And if you want to initialize some values or if you want to assign some values to those indexes, use the name of the array and use the index location where you want to set some values. So you can set the values like this, and if you want to retrieve the values, you can again use the array name and the index location to retrieve the values. So this is how you can initialize and then assign values and then print those values, retrieve them. Okay. And if you go back to the slide, there are certain examples that I have given here, like int an array equal to new int, and then you can say an array of 0, an array of 1, array of 2, something like this. Either you can do this, or if you see the highlight, if you see the part here, int brackets an array equal to curly braces 100, 200, so on, some thousand, and curly braces and semicolon, which means in this syntax what I'm trying to do is instead of splitting these things, see here what did I do? I tried to initialize in line 1 and assign some values at the next lines, but here initializing and assigning the values all done in one single shot in one line. Okay, so instead of asking for new, I'm just directly assigning 100, 200, 300, so that it will by default. So I'm requesting for 10 locations. By default 10 locations will be created for you, and each location will store like 100, 200, 300 consecutively. Okay, simultaneously, one after the other. And the next way is whatever we saw is single dimension array. Now you can have multi-dimension arrays also. Maybe in your school days or college days, you might have heard about some matrix. In matrix, you might have read about like 2 by 2 matrix, 3 by 3, 2 by 4, 5 by 6, like that. Different matrix you might have heard about, right? The same way, you can create or declare multi-dimension arrays in Java by just saying uh, two brackets. So if I say one bracket, it is a single dimension array. And if you do like two brackets, it is a multi-dimension array. So in the first row, you are storing these values. And in the second row, you're storing these values. Okay. Maybe I'll explain this example when I explain about strings later more. And the next thing that you can see is like int, you can store int type data, and char, you can store char type data, and you can have string object array or string array and all. This we'll see later slowly one by one. But assume that there are different ways of creating and initializing. All you need to understand is, are you just creating using a new variable, or are you directly assigning the values in one single shot? These are the two ways in which you can create and initialize arrays. Clear till this point? Okay. Yeah, that's good. So now, if this is clear, the next thing that I'm going to explain here is how to create an object in Java. Okay, how to create an object in Java. The most important thing. So I create a class called student. Okay, I created a class called student, and I hope everyone remembers that in the initial slide when we saw about a class, we understood that class can have attributes and methods, right? So let's start with attributes. And what are the attributes that I'm talking about? The attributes that I'm talking about is nothing but the features, like, or the properties that a class can contain. So now in a student class, let me declare some variables like int, id, and then string. Oh, okay. I'll do one thing. Maybe I'll just postpone this one. There is something which I'm talking about, a string, which is a different data type. So maybe what I will do is like, I will stop the class here for today. If you don't have any doubts, if you have any doubts, just let me know. I will explain the doubts, and we will wind up the class for today. No doubts? If so, I'm just stopping the recording for the day. So as a homework, what I want every one of you to do is like open your Eclipse, create a workspace. In that, create a Java project, okay? And inside that, create packages, different packages, and in each package, try to write different examples. Like in one example, just try to create a class, just a print statement, write some lines of code and try to save it and then execute it and see if you're able to see the output. And in the next package, make sure that you try to create a different class, write some examples for to see how you can write comments in Java. Then try to create a package, try to create a class, and see how you can use the data types and variable naming conventions and try to print the values. Then typecasting, like explicit and implicit castings, how you can do. Then an arrays example. So arrays, if you see here, the only thing that I explained here is like how you can create an int array. You can go ahead and create a double array. You can go ahead and create a character array, which means there are total of 8 primitive data types that we saw in Java. So you can create 8 types of arrays right now. Okay, in this current context, based on your understanding from the class, you can create 8 types of arrays. Okay, just try to declare them, assign the values, try to print the values, try to see what is the default value if you don't assign any variable to it, any value to it in that array and all. So try to do this as a homework, and all I want you to do is like get a lot of hands-on experience with these examples. If you try to skip these classes, like if you are unable to do the homework, following up the next sessions will be very difficult for you. Since these are very basic and initial steps, try to keep up with the pace and write all those examples in your Eclipse and try it. And just let me know if you face any difficulties. Okay.